You know, there are certain things which are said to us so often, so consistently, and by the people that we respect so much that we start taking them as universal truths, yeah, regardless of the context, you know, because over time I've noticed with most people is if something is told to you by somebody that you respect a lot, often and consistently enough, yeah, you start to believe it, and over time you might initially understand why it's important for you to adopt that something or to do that something. But over time we start losing context, and then we start applying it willy-nilly, so to speak, you know, without really thinking about the scenario in which we are applying it for. And for me, diversifying or diversification is one of those things, yeah. If you take diversification, and the premise around it is, if you've got your eggs in different baskets, yeah, and something happens to one or two, a couple of your eggs in some baskets, then in the broader sense you're still fine because you've hedged your risk across the basket. You know, the other baskets would still be fine, you know, versus having all of your eggs in one basket and something happens to that one basket and everything spills over. You know, you lose all of your eggs. That's like the basic premise, you know, and for me the underlying fear message which almost forces us to diversify even when it's not in our best interest at certain stages to be diversifying, yeah. And I was having a conversation with one of my fellow investors, and she had just started investing in this one strategy. I don't know if she was in general starting to invest, but she had started investing in one strategy, and she was going on around the fact that now she needed to diversify, you know, even though she hadn't actually yet completed the first deal or something like that. And that worried me a bit, and I was like, no, hold on, you know, I understand that you need to diversify, you know, it's something that we are told to do, but you have to understand the environment in which you are operating in, you know. And I couldn't help but start to think, you know, how many of us take this notion and just take it at face value to be the universal truth, you know, regardless of where you are, regardless of what you do, you need to diversify, you know. And as a result, I wanted to create this video because if there's one thing I've learned over the last 2 years, maybe even more, you know, and that lesson has become more and more and more potent and more strong in terms of my belief in it, is that whenever you are responsible, directly responsible for something, you know, you're responsible for the control of it, you're responsible for the decision making of it, you're responsible for the learning and development of yourself within that space. When you have full control in terms of doing something like investing in property, for instance, which is something that you have full control over, right? I am of course not talking about what's happening in the broader market, you know, like the macroeconomic factors that you can control. But if this is something that you're doing actively and you're the one that's making decisions over and over and over and over again, right? It's very, very important to choose a niche and focus on it. It's very, very important to choose a niche and focus on it. And by extension, go against what you've been taught, which is you need to diversify, at least in the beginning. And let me explain. When you diversify, especially if this is something that you do personally, right? Whenever we do something, we get skills from that thing, we get knowledge, and we become better at those things, right? And look at it this way. If you are focused on only one thing, and you need to make sure that every time you are consistently doing that one thing over and over and over again, you are inevitably going to be very, very, very well versed or very competent in that one thing, to a point where if you keep doing it over a prolonged period of time, you're going to become an expert. All right. And if there's one thing I've learned over time, more so recently, is that if you're an expert, even in a small niche, right, you're going to make more money than somebody that's all over the place, because you're able to focus your resources, you're able to focus your thinking, you know, you're even focusing your channeling in terms of your tunnel vision, you know. The more focused your tunnel vision is towards something, the better you become inevitably on that thing. And where the money is, where the real money is in focus, it's in the niche. Yeah? Because then you develop to an extent that no matter what's happening in that space, you are competent and you can execute. One. Again, should anything be changing in that space, because this is all you do, you know, you're at the very forefront, at the cutting edge of what's happening within that space. That's number two. And then number three, which is most important, is all of your processing power is directed at one thing. You know, there's this notion where if you take light and you spread it across, it's okay. But if you take the same light and focus it on one area, it's intense. It builds so much heat that it starts to burn whatever it is it's focused on. And that's what you become. You become laser focused on that one thing, and you become acutely competent in that one area. And as a result, you start to kill it in that area. But more importantly, there are people that will always be ahead of you. There are people within this property space that know everything. They are pioneers. You know, they've done student accommodation, they've done Airbnb, they've done MultiLed, they've done flipping, you know, and they know a bit of everything. And I don't care how hard you work, it's going to take a long time, if ever, for you to surpass such people. But if you say, you know what, I don't care about strategy A, B, and C, I'm just going to focus on D, right? You are more likely to become a pioneer and a market leader in that one niche. And as a result, it's worth your while to focus on that one niche. I hope I'm making sense. Yeah? So contrary to what everybody else tells you, unlike with shares, if you invest in shares and you're not really involved in the day-to-day running of the companies that you have shares in, it's in your best interest to invest in company A, which could be in the mining industry, company B, which could be in the retail industry, company C, which could be in the tech industry, right? So that if something happens in the mining industry, you know you still have tech and retail, right? And you're focused on something else. You're not at the cutting edge in terms of understanding what's happening at any given point in time within those sectors that your shares are operating in. So it's in your best interest to diversify. Put a bit here, put a bit here, put a bit here. Should anything go wrong, you're fine. You're still fine. You know, if everything works out very well, then you do well, basically. But if you are 100% in control of what's happening, then you need to focus. I'm happy to expand on this conversation because I think it's a conversation that needs to be had more and more. Instead of just saying because the pioneers are diversified and they always advocate for you to be diversified, I'm going to do it. Understand why is it that they want you to do so. And and something which I think a lot of people sometimes overlook is the fact that you can focus on one strategy, which could be multi-led, and that's all you do for the next X amount of years. And then once you've mastered that strategy, or once you've mastered that skill, focus on another skill. This way, at any given point in time, you're focusing on one or two skills or one or two area, sectors, strategies, of investing. And then only when you've mastered that skill do you move on to something else. Because if you are stretched, it takes you time to actually recontextualize and refocus. If you are reading now you start watching TV, and then now you have to start doing something with your hands. Every time you move from your hands to TV to reading, there's time that you waste in trying to refocus on that one thing. But if you always focused on one thing, you're in tune with it, and as a result, you're more likely to succeed. You're more likely to accelerate in terms of your ability to get new skills within that specific area, and you're more likely to kill it, type of thing. This is something I really find interesting, and something I'm noticing I'm increasingly more and more passionate about. You need to be good at something, and really, really good at something. This notion of being, the jack of all trades is not something which, for me personally, in my experience, will get you far. You need to be somebody that's very good at something, and once you figure that something out, then you become an expert, or you become super competent in that something, move on to other skills, and then start to build skills on top of each other, and then you can become the jack of all trades. So in a way, you're building master. You're building master of one or two, and combining those little masters into jack of all trades. I don't know. That's a thought that you could potentially have. Yeah. My name is Seth. I hope you find value in this. This is something I might be dropping more videos on. I'll see you in the next segment. Video series, anything. Be putting out more content.